Hello and welcome to Eye on Oakland. I'm Chuck Moss, your host, and we have a guest. It's always nice to take a break from the hard political stuff all the time. We have a local Birmingham author, the name of Lisa Piers. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Well, hi, Chuck. Thanks so much for having me.
Glad to have you. Now, you wouldn't be an author if you didn't have a book out. What's your book out and what is it all about?
So, Motor City Love Song is coming out February 10th. The premise of this is based deep in the Detroit indie music scene of the turn of the 21st century.
Okay, I'll break for so we're not talking about the MC5 and we're not talking about Bob Seger and the early Iggy Pop and are we talking about the White Stripes era?
We are. And it's great that the White Stripes have gotten so much fame. They well deserve it. There were so many other bands as well. In fact, Jack White was involved in many of them that were coming up around the same time in the, early to late 90s. And that is the environment that was really creative and no holds barred and fascinating. And that's what is the core of Motor City Love Song.
It is, of course, a love story, too. Can you give us a quick synopsis?
So back in the late 90s, a fantastic singer-songwriter, Paloma Doral, is kind of breaking from the pack in
Not
Detroit.
Palmyra de Loran.
Not at all, no. So Paloma is breaking from the pack in Detroit and making national and international waves, thanks in large part to her manager/girlfriend, Jace. So when they get to a pinnacle in her career, suddenly Paloma just disappears off the face of the earth. They know she's not dead, but they don't know what happened to her, leaving Jace heartbroken and broke. So now, 20-some years later, she's left music behind, but Jace finds out that the venue that they started at, the Artemis Club, is about to close. And so Jace decides, I'm going to have a benefit concert to save the venue, and there's only one person who will fill it.
And she's got to bring back
Paloma Doral.
Now, yes, of course, it obviously is a lesbian love story. And what's more Detroit rock and roll than that? I love the quote that you said, which was, I just like to love who I want and be loved back and have no one bat an eye. I like that, too. And the book doesn't bat an eye either. So let me ask, the Artemis, is that like lilies or paychecks or is it just...
Part of me was trying to think of, the really, dark and close clubs that, you barely get an elbow in. At the same time, from a staging point of view, I needed a bigger venue to have some of the things that I needed to have happen. So in my head, it's kind of a combination of the Majestic and even a little bit of the Masonic Temple with some clutch cargo thrown in.
A Masonic, that's not little.
It is not little. Part of the premise of the Artemis Club is that it had a storied history as a lecture hall, a place for edification and great thoughts, and now it's this trashy club where you don't want to go in the bathroom.
St. Andrews.
Yeah,
Andrews.
many places. Yeah.
St. Andrews.
Yeah, and the gold dollar, God rest its soul.
The gold dollar. Yeah, we can just keep it. Yes, but so I just Detroit rock and roll. I'll be ashamed to have to say this, but Alice and I were going to go to the Magic Stick one night, and we go downtown Detroit, and we get a line. The line's long. We just say, to heck with it, we go somewhere else. It turns out that about a half an hour later, after we would have gotten in, was when Jack White got in a fight with the guy from the Von Bondies, and they both we missed that. We walked out.
Well, history happens when you're not paying attention.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So this is not your first book, though.
It is not. It is not.
And you had a previous one in a rock setting.
Yes, I did. So my very first book, which I self-published, was Love and Other B-Sides. And that was born of just my love of not just music, but the people who create it. And I kind of figured those folks are people, too. Do they pump their own gas? Do they run their own errands? What do they do on their off hours? And that kind of drew me into a story of a classic rocker who was facing a lot of brain block, and a devoted fan became his muse, and then he became her headache.
Nice love story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was great. I've read it, actually. It's very, very good. Now, rock and roll, what draws you to that?
Well,
You just like it. I'm there too,
yeah.
you know.
Well, there's so much variety too, because people are coming at it for different reasons. A lot of it comes from people who feel like that they are just not able to be heard any other way. And many folks, that's because they are being pushed aside. Maybe their family life is terrible. Maybe they're living in a place that's really hard. Putting a guitar or keyboard in their hands gives them that chance to really find who they are, and then to see who else out there is kind of experiencing the same thing and finding community that way. And it's just part of everybody's everyday life. I was thinking, you can go into a supermarket and hear a song, and suddenly you're transported back to that concert that you went to with your friends. That you can still smell everything you smelled, and you remember every detail.
What's your? You mentioned it. You have a favorite concert?
Who?
The best? You've been to a lot of music.
I have, and there's a lot of variety there. I think part of it came for me when my daughters wanted to go with me. So that was one of the benefits of being here in the Detroit area, is that there's so many venues, so many different bands are here but also come through. And so when we were finding bands that all three of us really loved to see and were able to experience it together. So this is not a Detroit-based band, but the Airborne Toxic event, named after a Don DeLillo book,
yes,
was coming up in the early 2000s, and we got the chance to go to the Majestic, be right up there next to the lip of the stage, shake the hand of the singer afterwards, get pictures with the drummer, grab a
good stuff.
Guitar pick. And that is still one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had.
Well, now you're not. I got to say, what is it about the Detroit rock and roll scene that seems to resonate with everybody? I mean, why not Memphis? I mean, Memphis has its stuff, but why not? There's no Columbus rock and roll scene. Why Detroit? Why is there?
Ohio would disagree with you. Maybe it's more in Akron, but anyway,
well, we know who came from Akron.
Devo.
This is
and the Black Keys and Chrissie Hynde.
Chrissie Hynde. Well, Chrissie Hynde went to England, but yeah. So okay, we lived in Akron. For a little while, my family, and then we moved to Midland. And my sister once said, "Why couldn't we have stayed in Akron? And we could have, been punk." And someone said, if that happened, all the bands would come from Midland. But yeah,
that's kind of the thing. I know. I would say many parts of the country have a music scene that nobody else in the country knows about. But Detroit's industry is music. I mean, it is second to, or possibly even equal to, the automotive industry in some ways, because it reaches everyone on the globe. And so that foundation has meant that, you've got everybody from jazz and blues through rock and roll, rap, techno, everything comes from here. And I think some of it is just that, first off, this is an atmosphere where people get stuff done. They're not going to let somebody else do it for them. And so if they've got something to say, if they've got music they want to express, they're going to do it. And they're not going to wait for someone to give them permission. And so with the indie scene, part of it for me was just discovery. I mean, I moved here 20 years ago now, but had not heard of many of these other bands. And to find out about them, just listen and how totally amazing they are. And it was just really a revelation. And then to see how that came up at a time, particularly when the economics of the city weren't great, the reputation of the city wasn't terrific, but they still soldiered on, and they still continue today. That's just fantastic material.
And that's what makes sort of Detroit, the Detroit rock scene. It's very gritty. It's not not pretentious.
Exactly. I think the other thing was back to, there's such a variety of ways to do this. I didn't realize there were some alt country bands that were coming up at the same time. Goober and the Peas, Blanche. There's certainly some who are a bit more theatrical than others. Some are doing their own material. Certainly the Gories and
the Gories or the Gorgor Girls.
Both. But then you've got Detroit Cobras were a fantastic, and still are a fantastic, cover band. So there's something for everybody, and just make sure you don't let anybody spill your drink. So
No, that would be very bad. Did you ever run into a local Ann Arbor punk band named Blammo?
tell me more.
Well, that's my little sister.
Oh, there you go. There you go. More venues to see. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, they I think they're pretty much retired now. But yeah, so now finding your way to the Detroit rock scene, that must have been kind of diving in and all that. How was that hard, or was it fun, or where did you begin, or was it with your daughters?
I had an in because my partner's cousin had been a music booker in Ypsilanti at Cross Street Station. So that was a very popular band with the college folks.
Oh, yes.
And when he came on board there, they were starting to book some of those acts that were playing in Ann Arbor and downtown. And so he stayed in touch with a lot of those musicians. He had a lot of clips to share with me. And so he started not only introducing me to the music, but then sort of the backstage stuff, what he went through to, make the show happen, having to, rig baskets and microphones and, trying to make sure that the power stayed on through the whole set and that kind of thing. So between both of those, got to start looking for certain bands when they were playing. And then I became the one to say, okay, the henchmen are going to be at Planet UFO. Who's with me? Take a nap before you go. So I could be able to go and see some of those things.
My daughters, they would sometimes consent to let me drive them and drop them off so they didn't be seen with me. So that's good. But yeah, now just to dive into, I even think the best part would be going to the various clubs and into it.
Yeah, and that was something too. Being somebody who hadn't grown up here, I was discovering things that other people had been going to since middle school maybe. But just to see the variety of places and everything from just the absolute gorgeous Palace of the Fox to again, Clutch Cargo, which had been a church and then became a venue, and I think it's a church now.
And it's bounced around from different places.
Correct, yeah. So
I think it was out in Pontiac once.
It is. That's where we went.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too is then you get to kind of start seeing the same kind of characters in line, or the folks who are pressing up towards the front, to the point where literally my girls and I made an indie concert bingo card. Where see how many of these things you're going to find.
Did you get pogoed?
Well,
You get slammed.
Or is
that like a '90s thing?
That continues. I guess our taste in music maybe draws more towards the drunken girl who's picking a fight with security in the front row, that kind of thing. So a little bit different. But.
Not into the mosh pit or the.
Well, okay, so one of the very first concerts I took, I did what you did. I took my older daughter to a concert with a friend of hers, and they were 8th grade maybe. And so I'm standing with them in general admission, and at a certain point, it wasn't moshing necessarily, but it was just, the churn of the crowd. And I'm there with my purse trying to protect them. And at a certain point, I'm like, why am I doing this? They're fine. I'm getting in the way. So I just pulled out and sat at the bar until the show was done. But...
Well, you're braver than I would have been. But that's excellent. Well done. Well, we're talking with Lisa Pierce, who is the author of Motor City Love Songs. We actually have the book right here. This is a review copy, but it will be out on February
10th.
February 10th. Yep. And we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back once again with Lisa Pierce here on Eye on Oakland. Don't go away.
Bloomfield Township Senior Services promotes wellness and strengthens the community through social connections, fitness classes, aquatics, day trips, and more. Our staff is here to serve you, offering lifelong learning and interactive opportunities for residents age 50 and above. Invest in your vitality with us. Follow us to learn more and stay up to date. We look forward to meeting you.
Thank you, and welcome back to Eye on Oakland. Chuck Moss, your host. We're talking with Lisa Pierce, who's the author of Motor City Love Song, and it's definitely not only a love song for the romance, but it's a love song to Detroit rock and roll, which is, and you look, by the way, you do look very Detroit rock and roll. You look very good.
I do what I can at this point in my life.
Look at me. I might as well be like Wayne Newton here. But yeah, so now one thing I was just going to say is that the music scene in Detroit, it's just extremely chaotic. I mean, I have a couple of relatives that are quite involved in it or used to be, and it's just going down to a club and just see something. How did you find that? Just was it welcoming, or was it like, nah, you're not part of the club, or is it you have to pay your dues, or what?
Well, being someone as a paid audience member means that I can get in. I'm the reason. They want more of us, of course. What fascinated me is sometimes bands would be performing for, fewer people than were in the band, and I still don't know how those poor folks make a tour happen or whatever. And again, I think any musician worth their salt wants people to hear them with the hope of making that connection. And so I think that, there will always be posers, but they aren't who they're playing for. So I was really just delighted. And especially talking now with people who went to a lot of the concerts that were my background, when they were in high school or whatever, and the friendships that they made, being able to do that, that's what fascinates me as much as the music itself. The kind of bonds that you make with others that is only possible because of this backdrop.
Now, one thing I'll say is no celebrities were harmed in the making of the book. If this guy's, are there any particular artists that, or do you not want to say who was influenced her?
I got some very good advice from someone who's in the scene. It's like, if you make all of them fictional, then everyone will wonder if you're talking about them. So if that's happening, if they're reading it, I hope so. I think some of it is just that any scrappy group of musicians have maybe some similar origin stories of, piling in the van, going to terrible gigs, eating on the, out of the gas station, not getting paid. These kinds of things happen. And so just trying to see how that works, and then what kinds of personalities are in the mix, and seeing how to put them in there too.
Well, I know reading books about, the Beatles, who were afraid to fly. So they went all around England in their England days in little vans, driving up to Scotland, and so everybody's done it.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, how do you, just the one thing is that you have the main character, who's Paloma, has performance anxiety and quits, basically, for a number of reasons, and get in there. Is there any Meg White in that, or?
That was in the back of my head, but not like an overt, I'm not trying to tell the Meg White story, because honestly, nobody knows it except for her. I would say, though, that especially when people think of rock music and rock singers or performers, that they think, okay, you've made it. Once you've made it, why would you leave?
Right.
And so that was my question. What is it that's going on that would make her walk away?
Make someone at the top of their game walk away.
Completely walk away. And that is the mystery, and that is hopefully, something that people will enjoy discovering as they read.
Yes.
But it's also just kind of, back to what is it that someone values as a human being? Musicians are human beings. Someone who comes up, especially, again, if they're looking to music as a way to sort of feel more whole, then if music isn't giving it to them, or that situation isn't giving it to them, then what do they do? So that was kind of my sense of discovery as I was pulling together the overall story for this.
Well, because with Meg White, she played guitar, she played the drums, was very good, and she wasn't really into fame. Whereas Jack White, Jack wants to live on stage, and he does, and they're two very talented people. But it's like she just had it and said goodbye.
Right, and there are also many things that I would imagine are I have read that are part of her likely reasoning. Just the pushback of being a woman in rock and roll is hard to measure. Anything that she did could be skewed as wrong. Why is she doing that? And being brushed off and being demeaned and being objectified and not being seen as the same level of musician as Jack. And so that's something too that was kind of in the back of my head with this is a woman in, honestly, a city that is pretty welcoming to female musicians. I would say, from the people I've talked to, it was, many musicians just say, you're a musician first. That's what we're looking at. But that's not the case going national. That's not the case with everybody. And so how does that pull on what you want to do artistically and who how you want to live your daily life is something I was also trying to throw in here as well.
Well, it's also creatively, the Beatles got sick of just doing this one kind of song, and they were able to keep moving, but not everybody can break out of it. And John Lennon wanted to break out of being John Lennon Beatle, and he did, and arguably that's part of what, why he died. He just wanted to walk the streets of New York, and no, you can't do that. But the tension between wanting to grow and being in a role that won't let you,
Right.
That's also that.
Yeah, and the Beatles too just got kind of tired of doing concerts that no one could hear their music because the screaming was too loud. They wanted to control it in the studio, and so I think that's also a point of everyone's kind of their output is going to be theirs, and still you're trying to engage with an audience.
Yeah, I still, like everybody who lives here, probably most people around me, I wish Meg White would, I wish she'd come back, but it's like your heroine as well. So I'd give anything away. You got to read the book to find out what happens there. Now, one thing that was interesting was that you learn when you read books, you learn not just about the story and about the people there, but is event planning really as difficult as it seemed to be?
You know what? Yes. I am not at the thick of major event planning, but I'm definitely been around it enough to know that there's so much work to go into making it look so effortless.
There's a major subplot about one of the characters who does it makes event planning for various things about how one goes bad and how one, of course, you can use that skill to put on a very good rock and roll concert.
Yes.
But are big donors really as bad as, I just found
it is fiction. It is
All
fiction. Right. Anything is possible because human beings can do anything. But, I think some of this is back to what I was saying about the musician. So Paloma is trying to find what's going to help her, live her life. And Jace is as well,
Right.
Her being a manager was not of bands was not something that she thought she was going to do. And then it just became her passion. And that kind of butting up against, why was she doing it? Was it for herself? Was it for Paloma? Was it,
Yeah.
And then suddenly when Paloma's gone,
Boom.
And so certainly putting those skills to good use is one thing. And, she became successful in that arena, but was it really feeding her soul?
Yeah, obviously, it's only rock and roll, but we like it. Now, of all the things that you could do with your life, writing a book seems like one of the hardest things that you can do. I've never done it. But, so how did you decide you're going to write a book about it and sit down and do it and actually make yourself do it?
Well, part of that was when we moved here, we left San Francisco where I had been an actor. So I had a full-time day job as well as a pretty healthy stage career at the time. And so moving here meant I was going to have a change. And that storytelling had to go somewhere. But I literally did not think I was going to end up writing a book until it just kind of happened with Love and Other B-Sides,
Which is a rock and roll book.
Which is a rock and roll book. So I think that experience, first off, wow, I did it. If you have no pressure to, if no one's expecting you to do it, sometimes it makes it easier. But then through connections I made, shopping that book around, I was able to actually connect with the agent who then was able to make my first book, Love at 350 Degrees, that was traditionally published, happen. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the, how do you get it published? But I think just the writing of it becomes, I'm interested in something, and I start asking questions about it. What about the people who actually do it? As I was saying with Love and Other B-Sides, it's like, does, Bruce Springsteen pump his own gas? Well, I don't know. Let me think about it. In this case, it was sort of, why would someone step away from something that so many people, would give their lives to have, and especially as a creative person. And so then that kind of swirl gave me enough to start with, and then it becomes the technical thing of, I need to write a storyline. Some people call it an outline. I'm just kind of thinking of it as a general synopsis of, okay, if I want to end up here, which for me is always a happy ending, because why go through all this hell of writing it if it's not going to be a happy ending?
I don't like,
That's for me.
I mean, is Breaking Bad really a happy ending? I don't know. No.
Precisely. Different stories, different people. But anyway, and so then once that exercise is done, mechanical exercise, then I can kind of figure out, all right, well, what stages have to happen? The other thing I like to do when creating a story is to have kind of a ticking clock. In my baking story, Love at 350 Degrees, it was the fact that they were on a baking competition. So every episode was a contest, and then there would be a finale. And in this case, the concert's happening. They got a date. They're going to have to make the date. So that drives a lot of the action. So I know that it's got to wrap up at some point.
So the technical aspect of plotting it and making sure that this story arc, all that stuff, that's just how you can do that and sustain it and write a book.
I will tell you, the first time I was writing, I just my philosophy was just write the cool scenes first, write the things that I think would be interesting first, and then in sort of having mental index cards of, okay, well then where are they all going to go, which worked eventually, but I mean it took a very long time, and I didn't want to do an outline. That's Roman numerals and that's science, that's terrible. But there's more than one way to do it, and I've found that if I can see where this story is going, it just helps me relax. Then I'm not so worried about how is this going to wrap up. It's like, I know how it's going to wrap up, and then the creative part can come through.
Does a character ever show up and say, "Wait a minute, I'm not going to do that," or "We are going to do this"? Does it ever get out of your control?
I would say sometimes the character does kind of push back, and I know that some characters that seem, in some of my other stuff, seem like the easy villain. It's like, well, wait, these folks have parents. These folks have background. What is it that's really motivating them? And then that can kind of temper it to make sure that it's a bit more well-rounded and accessible, even if they are still doing dreadful stuff.
Well, it's the creation of characters always strikes me as one of the most difficult things, because you've got to give them all the different sides. I don't know how you do it. So, are they based on people? They're obviously based on people It's just hopefully nobody we know or. Okay.
Well, I think that it's more inspiration than being kind of a literal, gloss on it. So and I think sometimes when you've got many characters, you're looking at what other energy needs to be in this room. If you've got somebody who's nervous, you need somebody who's maybe more go get them. You need somebody who's blissfully unaware of the problems they might face, and there's others who just focus only on the problems. So trying to see how those personalities can come together can also help you know what the heart of these different people are, so that it isn't just one person divided up over six voices.
Six voices, right.
Yeah.
Well, Motor City Love Song for Lisa Pierce is the author, and where do you get this book? Where can you get it? Online, obviously?
Yes, you can literally get it wherever books are sold.
I will do the old pick up the product here. And
Thank you. Yes, it's going to be in paperback. It will also be in ebook and audio. I was even able to record the author notes myself. So
excellent.
I will be part of the audiobook.
Very good. Well, if you like Detroit rock and roll and you like good stories, I would recommend taking a look at it. We're talking local Birmingham author as well. Lisa Pierce is the author of Motor City Love Song. I'm Chuck Moss, and thank you for joining us here on Eye on Oakland.